The cantina fell silent as Krexthul the Bone Render stepped through the doorway. His massive frame filled the entrance, 12 feet of pure nightmare wrapped in armor made from the bones of his enemies. The chitinous plates gleamed under the dim lights, each one carved with the name of a species he had personally driven to extinction. Every alien in the cantina knew the stories. 10,000 confirmed kills in single combat. 17 star systems conquered by his claw alone. When the Galactic Council needed someone eliminated without questions, they sent Krexthul. He was death incarnate, and everyone in the galaxy knew it. The Vorthak warrior's 4 eyes scanned the room, looking for his contact. His mandibles clicked with impatience as lesser species scrambled to get out of his way. A Zephyrian diplomat actually fainted at the sight of him. Krexthul barely noticed. Fear was as natural to him as breathing. "You're late," came a voice from the corner booth. Krexthul turned his massive head toward the speaker. A small figure sat in the shadows, nursing a drink that glowed with an eerie blue light. The being was humanoid but unfamiliar to Krexthul, with pale skin and dark hair. Most importantly, this creature showed no fear. That was interesting. "I am never late," Krexthul growled in perfect galactic standard, his voice like grinding stone. "The universe simply waits for me." The figure laughed, actually laughed at him. "Good thing the universe has patience, then. Council Representative Veltar, I assume? You look different in person." Krexthul's confusion lasted only a moment before understanding struck. This creature was using a holographic disguise. With a thought, the warrior activated his bioscanners. The readings that came back made him pause. The life form before him was incredibly fragile by galactic standards. Thin bones, weak muscle density, no natural armor or weapons. "Human," Krexthul stated. It wasn't a question. "Commander Sarah Chen, Terran Special Forces," the human replied, dropping the disguise. She was smaller than he had expected, probably not even 6 feet tall. Her species had only joined the Galactic Council 3 years ago, and Krexthul had paid them little attention. They seemed unremarkable. "The Council sends me an infant species. As a messenger?" Krexthul's mandibles spread in what other Vorthak would recognize as amusement. How quaint. Sarah Chen's expression didn't change. She took another sip of her drink and gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit down, big guy. We need to talk." Krexthul remained standing. In his experience, showing any sign of accommodation to lesser species led to disrespect. Better to keep them properly intimidated. "Speak your message and be done with it." "Fine, have it your way." Sarah shrugged. "The Council has a job for you. Simple escort mission through Vorthak space. Some diplomatic convoy needs protection from raiders. Should be easy money for someone of your reputation." "The Bone Render does not do escort missions," Krexthul snarled. "I am a warrior, not a babysitter." "This might change your mind." Sarah slid a datapad across the table. The credits listed made even Krexthul's eyes widen slightly. It was enough to purchase a small moon. Plus, the Council is very interested in testing the new member species. They want to see how humans handle themselves in dangerous situations. Now this was more interesting. Krexthul had heard whispers about humanity's recent admission to the Council. Some species whispered that humans were soft, weak creatures who had only been admitted because they showed promise in technology and diplomacy. Others claimed they had some hidden strength that impressed the Council's military advisors. "You will be part of this convoy?" Krexthul asked. "Leading it," Sarah confirmed. "Just me and a small crew in a single ship. Like I said, simple escort mission." Krexthul studied the human more carefully. There was something about her that didn't fit with what he knew about her species. Most beings, when facing him, showed some sign of stress. Elevated heartbeat, nervous movements, chemical changes in their scent. This human showed none of these things. She sat relaxed, almost bored, as if she were discussing the weather rather than hiring the galaxy's most feared killer. "The convoy route goes through the boneyards," Krexthul pointed out, referring to a region of space littered with the wreckage of his previous victories. Many would-be raiders still haunt that area, hoping to claim some of my trophies. No, Sarah said simply. My presence alone will draw every glory-seeking fool in 3 sectors. They will attack in waves, hoping to be the one who finally kills Krexthul the Bone Render. I'm counting on it. The answer surprised him. Most clients wanted to avoid such attention, preferring stealth and speed to violence. They hired him for his reputation as much as his skill, hoping enemies would flee rather than fight. This human seemed to want the opposite. You seek death, human? Krexthul asked, leaning forward slightly. His combat instincts were telling him something was wrong here, but he couldn't identify the threat. Sarah's laugh was cold and humorless. Death? No, I don't seek it. But I don't run from it either. Where I come from, we have a saying, the only way out is through. Sometimes the quickest way to the other side of trouble is straight down its throat. She stood up, leaving payment for her drink on the table. We leave at 800 tomorrow, docking. Bay 94. Try not to be late again. The universe might get impatient. Krexthul watched her walk away, noting the way she moved. There was no fear in her stride, no subservience in her posture. She walked like a warrior. It had been centuries since anyone had spoken to him with such casual disrespect and lived to tell about it. As Sarah reached the cantina door, she paused and looked back over her shoulder. Oh, and Krexthul? You might want to bring extra ammo. Where we're going, you'll need it. Then she was gone, leaving the Bone Render alone with his thoughts and a room full of terrified aliens who were pretending they hadn't been listening to every word. Krexthul stood there for several minutes, processing what had just happened. In his long life, he had faced thousands of different species, each with their own approach to negotiation. Some begged, some bribed, some tried to intimidate him with threats they couldn't back up. None had ever treated him like an equal. This human intrigued him, and in Krexthul's experience, anything that intrigued him usually died beautifully. He left the cantina, already planning for tomorrow's mission. The credits were good, but that wasn't why he would take this job. He was curious about this species called humanity, and he had a feeling that Commander Sarah Chen would provide him with some very interesting answers. Behind him, the cantina slowly returned to its normal volume as the patrons realized the Bone Render had finally left. But the conversation stayed focused on one topic for the rest of the night. The human who had looked death in the eye and asked it to bring friends. The next morning would mark the beginning of a partnership that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Order. But for now, Krexthul simply looked forward to a good hunt. Docking Bay 94 buzzed with activity as workers loaded supplies onto Sarah's ship, the Defiant. The vessel was modest by galactic standards, a medium-sized transport with reinforced hull plating and enough firepower to handle pirates. Nothing that would impress someone like Krexthul. The Bone Render arrived precisely at 800, his massive form causing the dock workers to scatter like frightened insects. His personal ship, the Skull Crusher, dwarfed Sarah's vessel. Its hull was black, as space itself, covered in spikes made from the bones of his victims. Weapon systems bristled from every surface like deadly growths. Sarah stood at the bottom of her ship's ramp checking a data pad. She looked up as Krexthul approached, her expression unreadable. Right on time. I'm impressed. I am always punctual. When death is involved, Krexthul replied, his 4 eyes studying her ship with obvious disappointment. This is what you plan to take through the boneyards? I have seen escape pods with better armor. She's tougher than she looks. Sarah patted the hull affectionately. Besides, it's not the size of the ship that matters, it's how you use it. Krexthul's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. You humans have interesting sayings. Very well. I will follow at a distance. When the raiders come, and they will come, stay out of my way. I would hate to accidentally destroy you before I get paid. Sarah smiled, and something about that expression made Krexthul's combat instincts tingle. About that, there's been a small change of plans. The diplomatic convoy was delayed. It's just us. Just us? Krexthul's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. You said this was an escort mission. I lied. Sarah's casual admission hit Krexthul. like a physical blow. No one lied to the bone render. People told him what he wanted to hear out of fear, or they told him the truth out of respect. They did not lie. Then what is this really about, human? Sarah's smile widened. The council wanted to test both of us. You to see if the great Krexthol is still as deadly as the stories claim. Me to see if humans can handle themselves against the galaxy's best. Think of it as a job interview. Krexthol felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Surprise. This tiny creature had just admitted to deceiving him, knowing full well what he did to those who crossed him. Either she was incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. You realize I could kill you right now? He stated matter-of-factly. You could. Try, Sarah agreed cheerfully. But then you'd miss out on the fun. Come on, Krexthol. When was the last time you had a real challenge? When was the last time someone made you work for your victory? Before the Vorthak warrior could respond, Sarah was already walking up her ship's ramp. We launch in 10 minutes, try to keep up. As the Defiant lifted off, Krexthol followed in the Skullcrusher, his mind racing. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. In his experience, lesser species either worshipped him or feared him. They didn't challenge him to games. The journey to the boneyards took 6 hours. Sarah's ship moved steadily through hyperspace while Krexthol's vessel shadowed it. He spent the time reviewing everything he knew about humans. It wasn't much. They were new to the galactic community, had no natural weapons or armor, and seemed to rely heavily on technology and teamwork. When they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the boneyards, the view was spectacular and terrifying. Thousands of ship hulks drifted in the void, the remains of vessels that had challenged Krexthol over the years. Some were ancient, others so recent their emergency beacons still blinked weakly. Quite a collection. Sarah's voice crackled over the comm. You must be very proud. Each one represents a lesson learned, Krexthol replied. Perhaps your ship will teach me something new about human engineering when I add it to the collection. We'll see about that. They had been traveling through the graveyard for less than an hour when the first raiders appeared. 3 ships, sleek and fast, emerged from behind a massive derelict cruiser. Krexthol recognized the design, Ravager pirates, known for their hit-and-run tactics. Stay close to me, human, Krexthol commanded over the comm. I will handle this quickly. Actually, I have a better idea. Sarah's voice was calm, almost conversational. Why don't you sit this one out? Let me show you how humans handle pirates. Before Krexthol could respond, the Defiant broke formation and accelerated directly toward the Ravager ships. This wasn't the evasive maneuvering he expected. This was a head-on attack run. The pirates opened fire, energy bolts streaking toward the small human ship. Sarah's vessel weaved between the attacks with surprising grace, but Krexthol could see she was taking hits. Her shields flared with each impact. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of returning fire or trying to escape, Sarah activated her ship's self-destruct sequence. Krexthol's sensors detected the massive energy buildup immediately. Human, what are you doing? Something your reputation couldn't do. Sarah's voice was steady despite the fact that she was about to die. Something they won't expect. The Defiant exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking 2 of the Ravager ships with it. The third pirate vessel, damaged but intact, spun away from the blast zone. For several seconds, Krexthol simply stared at the expanding debris field. The human had killed herself to take out a few pirates. It made no tactical sense. The loss ratio was terrible. Her ship was worth more than theirs. Then his sensors detected something impossible, a small escape pod racing away from the explosion, heading directly toward the remaining Ravager ship. Did you really think I'd blow myself up without a backup plan? Sarah's voice came through the pod's communicator. That's not how humans work, big guy. We're sneaky. As Krexthol watched in fascination, the escape pod attached itself to the pirate vessel's hull. Minutes later, the Ravager ship's weapons powered down and its engines shut off. Through the ship's viewports, Krexthol could see the crew scrambling, in panic. How? Krexthol demanded. While you were all watching the fireworks, I boarded their ship through their waste disposal port. Sarah explained as if this were perfectly normal. Amazing how everyone forgets about the garbage chute. Their crew is unconscious, non-lethal gas. Their ship is mine now. The stolen Ravager vessel powered up under new management and pulled alongside the Skull Crusher. Through the bridge viewports, Krexthul could see Sarah sitting in the captain's chair, looking perfectly at home. "Want to know the best part?" Sarah asked over the comm. "Your reputation actually helped. They were so busy trying to impress you by attacking my ship that they forgot to check for escape pods. They thought that explosion meant easy victory." Krexthul felt something strange stirring in his chest. Respect? Admiration? He wasn't sure. In all his years of warfare, he had never seen anyone use their own death as a weapon. "You destroyed your ship," he pointed out. "Insurance will cover it," Sarah replied casually. "Besides, this one's faster, and it has better weapons." As if to demonstrate, she fired a warning shot across the bow of another ship that was approaching. More pirates drawn by the explosion. The message was clear: back off. "You fight like a Vorthak," Krexthul said, and in his culture, there was no higher compliment. "No," Sarah corrected him. "I fight like a human. And that, my scary friend, is something this galaxy has never seen before." The second group of pirates, seeing their comrade's fate, decided to find easier prey elsewhere. As they watched the ship's retreat, Krexthul realized that his simple escort mission had become something far more interesting. "Where to now, partner?" Sarah asked, already plotting a course deeper into the boneyards. Krexthul considered his options. He could kill this human now and be done with it, or he could see where this strange partnership led. The rational choice was obvious, but watching someone use their own death as a tactical advantage had been the most entertaining thing to happen to him in centuries. The deep yards, he decided. If you truly wish to test yourself against the galaxy's best, we should visit the hive worlds. Now you're talking my language. Sarah's laughter echoed through the comm. As their two ships moved deeper into the graveyard, Krexthul found himself looking forward to whatever came next. This human had already surprised him twice. He was beginning to suspect she was just getting started. The stolen Ravager ship, now renamed Second Chance by Sarah, drifted alongside the Skull Crusher in the shadow of a massive derelict battleship. They had been traveling deeper into the boneyards for 2 days, and Krexthul was beginning to understand that this human had a very different relationship with danger than any species he'd encountered. "So tell me," Sarah's voice came through the comm as they shared an evening meal, "how exactly does one become the galaxy's most feared warrior? Is there like a test? A certification process?" Krexthul paused in devouring his protein cubes. Through the view screen, he could see Sarah sitting casually in her ship's mess hall, eating something that looked suspiciously like the Terran food called pizza. She had her feet up on the control console, completely relaxed despite being surrounded by the wreckage of thousands of ships. "You earn the title through strength," Krexthul explained. "By defeating every challenger, by conquering worlds, by making the galaxy remember your name in whispers." "Sounds exhausting." Sarah took another bite of pizza. "What's the retirement plan like?" The question caught Krexthul off guard. In Vorthak culture, warriors died in battle. There was no retirement. "We do not retire. We fight until we die gloriously." "That's depressing," Sarah shrugged. "What's the point of being the scariest thing in the galaxy if you can't enjoy it? No beaches, no hobbies, no time to read a good book?" Krexthul found himself genuinely confused. "You speak as if death is not important." "Death is very important." Sarah's expression grew more serious. "It's the most important thing, actually. But I learned a long time ago that if you're too afraid of dying, you never really live." Before Krexthul could respond, his sensors detected movement. Multiple ships were approaching from different directions, moving to surround them. The ambush was expertly coordinated. "We have company," Krexthul announced, his voice shifting to combat readiness. Sarah glanced at her own sensors and nodded calmly. "Yep, 12 ships, probably skull hunters based on their formation. They're trying to box us in." "Skull hunters?" Krexthul's mandibles clicked with anticipation. Mercenaries who collect trophies from the ships they kill. They've been hunting me for decades. And now they think we're trapped, Sarah said, still eating her pizza. Poor things. Krexthul expected her to start preparing for battle, activating shields and charging weapons. Instead, she finished her meal and walked to her ship's engineering section. What are you doing, human? Setting up a little surprise. You know what's funny about skull hunters? They always want to board their targets alive. They like to add the crew's bones to their collections. Through the view screen, Krexthul watched Sarah work at her engineering controls. She was doing something to the ship's power systems, but he couldn't tell what. They're moving into attack formation, Krexthul reported. We should prepare defenses. Nah, I've got a better idea. Sarah's voice was cheerful, almost excited. Hey, Krexthul, you ever hear about human psychology experiments? Now is not the time for... There was this scientist on Earth, guy named Pavlov. He had this theory about conditioning responses. Ring a bell, give food, repeat. Pretty soon the bell alone makes the subject expect food. The Skull Hunter ships opened fire, their weapons lighting up the void. But instead of targeting the ships directly, they were firing warning shots, trying to disable engines and weapons without destroying their prizes. The thing about conditioning, Sarah continued as energy bolts flashed around them, is that it works both ways. You can condition someone to expect one thing, and then give them something completely different. Sarah activated whatever she had been working on. Suddenly, the second chance began broadcasting a distress signal on all frequencies, but not just any distress signal. It was Krexthul's personal battle cry, the sound that struck fear into the hearts of warriors across the galaxy. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Skull Hunter ships ceased fire, their crews clearly confused. They had come expecting to find the Bone Render trapped and vulnerable, but instead, they were hearing his war cry coming from the smaller ship. Neat trick, Krexthul admitted, grudgingly. Oh, that's just the warm-up. Sarah walked back to her pilot seat. The real fun starts now. Instead of fleeing or fighting back, Sarah did something completely unexpected. She flew the second chance directly toward the largest Skull Hunter ship, sending a message on open channels. Attention, Skull Hunters, her voice echoed across space. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Special Forces. I formally challenge your leader to single combat. Winner takes all. Krexthul's four eyes widened. You cannot be serious. Deadly serious. Watch this. The lead Skull Hunter ship, a massive vessel covered in bone trophies from hundreds of kills, responded to the challenge. Its captain, a 8-foot-tall Nixari warrior named Thaxagol, appeared on the view screen. His skull was decorated with ritual scars, and his tusks were capped with platinum. A human challenges me? Thaxagol's laugh was like grinding metal. I accept. Prepare to join my collection, little one. There's just one condition, Sarah said sweetly. The fight takes place on my ship. Traditional rules. No weapons except what we carry personally. Thaxagol's confidence wavered slightly. Something about the human's calm demeanor was unsettling. But with his entire fleet watching, he couldn't back down. Agreed. I will board your vessel in 10 minutes. As the transmission ended, Krexthul immediately contacted Sarah. What are you planning? That warrior has killed hundreds in single combat. He could tear you in half. Probably, Sarah agreed, checking her equipment. But here's the thing about not caring if you die. It makes you really creative with tactics. Elaborate. Tell me, Krexthul, what do you know about human ship's life? Support systems? Krexthul consulted his database. Standard gravity, oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere, temperature ranges suitable for human biology. Why? What if I told you that this particular ship's atmosphere is currently cycling through a mild dose of nitrogen narcosis? You know, like what deep-sea divers get. Makes you dizzy, impairs judgment, slows reaction time. The implication hit Krexthul like a physical blow. You've poisoned your own air? Just enough to level the playing field. Humans are more resistant to it than most species. Something about our evolution on a planet with variable atmospheric conditions. Sarah was suiting up in what looked like a basic combat outfit. But Krexthul could see small modifications. Extra padding, Hidden tools, environmental controls. That's... Krexthul struggled for words. That's brilliant and insane. Welcome to humanity, Sarah grinned. We've been called both. The Nexari warrior's shuttle docked with the second chance, and Thaxagol strode aboard confidently. He was impressive. Massive muscles, natural weapons in the form of claws and tusks, and armor made from the bones of his enemies. The fight took place in the ship's main cargo hold. As soon as it began, Krexthul could see the effects of Sarah's atmospheric manipulation. Thaxagol moved slightly slower than normal, his reactions just a fraction delayed. But even weakened, he was still incredibly dangerous. His first swipe nearly took Sarah's head off, leaving deep gouges in the bulkhead, where she had been standing a split second before. Sarah didn't fight like a traditional warrior. She used the environment to her advantage, bouncing off walls, using cargo containers as shields and weapons. Most importantly, she used Thaxagol's own strength against him, letting his powerful strikes damage the ship itself. 20 minutes later, it was over. Thaxagol lay unconscious on the deck, brought down not by superior strength but by superior tactics and preparation. Sarah stood over him, barely breathing hard. Impressive, Krexthul said over the comm. But what now? His fleet still surrounds us. Sarah activated the ship's intercom, broadcasting to all the Skull Hunter vessels. Your leader is defeated but alive. According to your own laws, I now claim leadership of this fleet. The response was immediate arguing and chaos among the Skull Hunter ships. Some wanted to honor the traditional challenge. Others wanted to simply destroy both ships and be done with it. Sarah let the argument continue for exactly 60 seconds. Then she did something that silenced them all. She walked to the Second Chance's self-destruct panel and began the activation sequence. Here's the deal, she announced calmly. You can accept the results of traditional combat and follow a new leader. Or you can watch me blow this ship with all of us on it. Your choice. The Skull Hunter fleet fell silent. Even Krexthul was speechless. You see? Sarah continued. The thing about humans is that we don't just fight to win. We fight to make our deaths mean something. And if that means taking out a dozen pirate ships to protect innocent travelers, well, that's a pretty good death, in my book. One by one, the Skull Hunter ships powered down their weapons and accepted Sarah's leadership. Some fled rather than serve a human, but most stayed, curious about what this strange new leader would do. As Sarah released the ships to pursue other targets, Krexthul finally spoke. I begin to understand why the Council was interested in your species. Because we're good fighters? No, Krexthul said thoughtfully. Because you fight without fear of consequences. Most species preserve themselves above all else. Humans seem to preserve principles. Sarah laughed. That's one way to put it. My grandmother always said, live like you're not afraid to. 3 days deeper into the boneyards, Sarah and Krexthul made an unexpected discovery. Hidden behind the wreckage of an ancient Vorthak dreadnought, they found something that changed everything. A planet. Not just any planet, but one that had been consumed by something terrible. Impossible, Krexthul whispered as his sensors fed him data. This system was empty when I conquered it 200 years ago. Sarah studied her own readings, her usual humor replaced by grim concentration. Planet's been hollowed out from the inside, surfaces covered in what looks like holes, millions of them. Through their view screens, they could see the world slowly rotating. What had once been a lush planet was now a gray, pockmarked sphere. The holes Sarah mentioned were perfectly circular, each one exactly the same size, as if something had systematically drilled through the entire planet. The energy readings are wrong, Sarah muttered, adjusting her sensors. It's like the planet is singing. She was right. Deep below the threshold of normal hearing, something was producing a rhythmic pulse, a heartbeat that came from the planet's core. We should leave, Krexthul said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. For the first time since Sarah had met him, the bone render sounded uncertain. When has leaving ever been the smart choice? Sarah asked, already plotting a course toward the planet. Besides, aren't you curious? In all your years of conquering, you've never seen anything like this. Before Krexthul could respond, their ship's alarms began blaring. Multiple contacts were emerging from the planet's surface, rising from those perfect holes like a swarm of metal insects. Ships, Sarah identified, watching her tactical display fill with red dots. No, wait. These aren't ships. They're alive. The creatures emerging from the planet were unlike anything in known galactic databases. Each one was roughly ship-sized but organic, with chitinous black shells and wings that rippled through space as if swimming through water. They moved in perfect unison, like a single organism with thousands of bodies. The Devourers, Krexthul, breathed, his voice filled with something Sarah had never heard from him before. Fear. The what now? Legends, stories told to frighten young warriors, creatures that could strip entire worlds clean, leaving nothing but empty shells. But they were destroyed millennia ago, the entire galaxy united to stop them. Well, Sarah watched the swarm approach. Looks like the galaxy missed a few. The creatures surrounded their ships but didn't attack immediately. Instead, they hovered just outside weapons range, studying the two vessels with what looked like curiosity. They're scanning us, Krexthul reported. But these readings, they're not just looking at our ships. They're examining our minds. Sarah felt it then. A gentle probing sensation in her head, like fingers leafing through a book. Most people would have panicked, but Sarah had learned long ago that panic was just fear wearing a disguise. Let them look, she said calmly. Might be interesting to see what they think of human psychology. The mental probing intensified, and suddenly, Sarah could feel another consciousness touching hers. It was vast, ancient, and utterly alien. But underneath the alienness, she sensed something familiar: loneliness. They're trying to communicate, Sarah realized. Not with words, with emotions, memories. Images flashed through her mind. Entire civilizations consumed, worlds stripped bare, the Devourers spreading like a plague through the galaxy. But also memories of isolation, of being hunted, of hiding for eons, waiting for the galaxy to forget them. They want something, Sarah said, her eyes closed in concentration. They're showing me Earth. Wait, how do they know about Earth? More images flooded her consciousness. Earth is seen from space, human cities, human wars, human art. And then an emotion so strong it nearly knocked her unconscious. Hope. Sarah opened her eyes to find Krexthul staring at her through the view screen. They want to make a deal, she announced. A deal? With Devourers? Krexthul's mandibles clicked frantically. Impossible. They consume everything. They don't negotiate. These ones do. Sarah stood up, walking to her ship's airlock. They're inviting us down to the planet. Specifically, they want to meet the humans. You cannot be serious about, "Oh, I'm going." Sarah was already suiting up. The question is, are you coming? With me? Or are you going to let a human go alone into one of the most dangerous situations in galactic history? Krexthul felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: indecision. Every instinct told him to flee, to put as much distance between himself and this cursed planet as possible. But the thought of this insane human walking alone into a devourer nest was somehow more disturbing than staying. If we die, Krexthul said finally, it will be the stupidest death in galactic history. Or the most important one. Sarah grinned. Come on, big guy. When was the last time you did something that scared you? An hour later, they stood on the planet's surface in environmental suits, surrounded by devourers. Up close, the creatures were even more unsettling. Each one was roughly humanoid in shape but covered in that same chitinous armor. They had no visible eyes, yet Sarah could feel them watching. The largest devourer approached them, and when it spoke, its voice resonated directly in their minds. Humans. The voice was like static across multiple radio frequencies. We have searched for you. Why? Sarah asked, her hand resting casually on her sidearm. Because you are like us. You survive when others would die. You adapt when others would break. You continue when others would stop. Krexthul bristled. Humans are nothing like you. You destroy worlds. Yes, the devourer agreed without shame. We consume to survive, but we do not enjoy destruction. We do not glory in conquest. We simply are. Sarah felt another wave of communication, this one showing her the devourer's true history. They weren't invaders or tyrants. They were refugees, fleeing something so terrible that stripping worlds clean was the only way to stay ahead of it. What are you running from? She asked. The answer came as pure terror transmitted directly into her brain. Images of space itself unraveling, of reality breaking down at the quantum level, of something that existed in the spaces between spaces hunting them across the galaxy. The Void Breakers, the devourer explained. They come from outside this universe. They seek to unmake everything that is. We have run for millions of years, but we grow tired. We need allies who understand survival at any cost. And you think humans can help you fight things that break reality? Sarah asked. We have watched your species. You fight impossible wars and win. You face extinction and choose to continue. You look at death and laugh. Yes, we believe you can help. Krexthul stepped forward. What about the rest of the galaxy? If these void breakers come, they will consume everything, the devourer confirmed. Your galactic council, your warrior traditions, your conquered worlds, all will be unmade, unless we work together. Sarah looked at Krexthul, then back at the devourer. The smart thing would be to report this to the council. Let the politicians and generals figure out what to do. But Sarah had never been one for smart choices. What do you need from us? She asked. The devourer's response was another wave of images. Humans and devourers working together, sharing technology, learning from each other. Humans teaching them about culture, art, and hope. Devourers teaching humans about survival, adaptation, and the true nature of the universe. A partnership, Sarah interpreted. You want a permanent alliance. Yes, but not with your council. They would see us only as monsters. We want partnership with humans who understand that sometimes, to preserve life, you must make terrible choices. Sarah felt Krexthul's gaze on her and knew he was thinking the same thing she was. This was bigger than their little test. This was the kind of decision that would reshape the galaxy. I'm just one human, Sarah pointed out. I can't speak for my entire species. You speak for yourself. That is enough to begin. Sarah looked around at the hollowed planet, at the creatures that had stripped it clean in their desperate flight from something even worse. She thought about humanity's long history of making allies out of enemies, of finding hope in the darkest places. Okay, she said finally. Let's talk. As Sarah began the most important negotiation in galactic history, Krexthul found himself wondering if he was witnessing the dawn of a new age or the prelude to universal catastrophe. Probably both, knowing this human. But as he watched Sarah treat these terrifying creatures like potential friends rather than monsters, Krexthul realized something profound. He had spent his entire life being the thing others feared. But this human had shown him something more powerful than fear. She had shown him hope. And for the first time in centuries, Krexthul the Bone Render found himself looking forward to tomorrow instead of just surviving today, even if tomorrow might bring the end of everything. 2 weeks after their meeting with the Devourers, Sarah and Krexthul found themselves in an impossible situation. The ancient orbital defense station they had discovered wasn't just a weapon, it was a key that could activate a network of reality, anchors across the galaxy potentially stopping the Void Breakers. But first they had to survive long enough to use it. Contact, multiple bogies incoming, Sarah shouted over the comm as her stolen ship shook under enemy fire. They weren't fighting pirates anymore. These were Void Breaker scouts, creatures of living darkness that existed partially outside normal space. Through the chaos of battle, Krexthul watched in amazement as Sarah piloted her damaged ship through impossible maneuvers. A human shouldn't be able to react fast enough to dodge energy that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But somehow, she was doing it. The defense station's main reactor is down, Krexthul reported, his own ship barely holding together. We need someone inside to manually restart it. On it. Sarah's ship broke formation, diving toward the ancient station through a wall of interdimensional fire. That's insane. The radiation levels will kill you. Only if I take too long. Sarah's ship crashed through the station's docking bay, disappearing inside the superstructure. Krexthul found himself alone against 12 Void Breaker scouts. In the past, he would have considered this excellent odds. But these weren't normal enemies. They phased in and out of reality, striking from angles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. His ship's weapon systems couldn't target them properly. Half his shots passed harmlessly through enemies that weren't quite there. The other half barely scratched their dark hulls. Then something unexpected happened. Sarah's voice came through the comm, not from her ship, but from the defense station itself. Hey, Krexthul, remember what I said about humans and backup plans? Suddenly, the space around them lit up with energy as the defense station came online. But instead of firing on the Void Breakers, it was projecting a massive reality stabilization field. What are you doing? Krexthul demanded as the Void Breakers suddenly became solid, unable to phase between dimensions. Making them fight fair. Sarah's voice crackled with static and what sounded like pain. The station can anchor reality in this sector for about 10 minutes. After that, well, let's hope 10 minutes is enough. With the Void Breakers unable to use their dimensional tricks, Krexthul finally had targets he could hit. His years of combat experience took over, and he tore through the enemy formation with methodical precision. But even as he fought, he could hear the strain in Sarah's voice. Whatever she was doing to keep the station running was killing her. Sarah, get out of there. Can't. Someone has to keep feeding power to the Matrix. Manually. Through his ship's sensors, Krexthul could detect the massive energy buildup in the station's core. The power levels were far beyond what any biological organism should be able to survive. The Devourers are here, Sarah announced, and Krexthul's sensors confirmed it. A swarm of the organic ships emerged from hyperspace, immediately engaging the remaining Void Breakers. The battle was unlike anything Krexthul had ever seen. Devourers and Void Breakers fought with the desperation of species that had been enemies for millions of years. Energy weapons that could unmake matter itself exchanged fire with bioprojectiles that rewrote the laws of physics as they traveled. But even with the Devourers' help, they were outnumbered. More Void Breaker scouts kept arriving, attracted by the reality anchor's signal. Sarah, how long can you hold that field? Not much longer. Her voice was getting weaker. But I've got one more trick. Remember what I told you about human insurance policies? Before Krexthul could ask what she meant, the defense station began splitting apart, not exploding, deliberately disassembling itself into thousands of smaller components. I've rigged every section of this station to become a mini reality anchor, Sarah explained, her words coming in gasps. They'll spread across the galaxy, creating a permanent network. The Void Breakers won't be able to break through reality anymore. And you? I'm staying with the main core. Someone has to guide the network, make sure it reaches every system. Krexthul felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Pure, absolute terror. Not fear of death, but fear of losing someone who had become important to him. No, he said firmly. You're coming with me. Not how it works, big guy. This is what humans call a heroic sacrifice. This is what I call stupidity. Krexthul's ship broke through the battle, dodging both Devourer bioattacks and Void Breaker reality warps. He headed straight for the defense station's core. Krexthul, don't. You'll die. Then I'll die doing something worthwhile for once, Krexthul replied, feeling strangely calm. You've taught me that death means nothing if life means nothing, but life means everything. He crashed his ship directly into the station's control room, using his personal armor to survive the impact. Inside, he found Sarah barely conscious, her hands fused to the control matrix by raw energy. You idiot, she whispered as he approached. You beautiful, terrifying idiot. You're one to talk. Krexthul carefully lifted her away from the controls. Can this system run automatically? For about 5 minutes. Then it needs constant supervision. Krexthul looked at the control matrix, then at Sarah's damaged hands, then made a decision that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. He placed his own claws on the energy conduits. The pain was incredible. Energy that could power entire star systems flowed through his nervous system. But along with the pain came understanding. He could feel the entire network spreading across the galaxy, each anchor point taking hold and stabilizing reality. "Together," he said through gritted teeth. "We'll do this together." Sarah managed a weak laugh. "What humans call friendship. What Vorthak call honor," Krexthul replied. Together, they guided the reality anchor network as it spread across the galaxy. Through their shared connection to the system, they could feel the Void Breakers retreat as their ability to break through dimensional barriers was cut off. The battle outside was ending. The few remaining Void Breaker scouts fled into deep space, unable to phase away from the pursuing devourers. "It's done," Sarah said finally, as the last anchor point locked into place. "The galaxy is protected." They both collapsed, their bodies pushed far beyond their limits. As darkness closed in, Krexthul heard Sarah say something that made him smile despite the pain. "Hey, Krexthul, think we passed our test?" "With highest honors," he replied. As rescue ships from both human and devourer fleets rushed toward the dying station, Krexthul realized that somewhere in the process of saving the galaxy, he had learned what Sarah had been trying to teach him. All along, the most powerful weapon in the universe wasn't fear or strength or even technology. It was the willingness to trust someone else with your life, and maybe, just maybe, to call them a friend, even if they were completely insane. As the rescue ships drew closer, both warriors drifted unconscious, floating in the ruins of the ancient station that had become the foundation for a new age of galactic peace. Neither of them knew it yet, but their partnership had just become the most famous friendship in galactic history. Some would call it the alliance that saved everything. Others would simply call it what humans had always called it: friendship. 3 months after the Battle of the Reality Anchors, the Galactic Council chambers buzzed with unprecedented activity. Representatives from every known species had gathered for what historians would later call the most important assembly in galactic history. At the center of it all sat two figures who had become legends across the galaxy: Commander Sarah Chen and Krexthul the Bone Render. Both still bore the scars from their ordeal at the defense station, but they were alive, much to the amazement of medical experts from 12 different species. "The Council recognizes Commander Chen of the human delegation," announced the Council speaker, a elderly crystalline being whose voice resonated through multiple dimensions. Sarah stood up, moving a bit stiffly due to the neural damage she'd sustained from direct contact with the reality anchor network, but her voice was strong and clear. "Thank you, Council Speaker. 3 months ago, many of you considered humans to be a minor species. Too young, too reckless, too primitive to matter in galactic affairs. Some of you still think that." She gestured to Krexthul, who rose beside her. "This is Krexthul of the Vorthak, formerly known as the Bone Render, Terror of the Void, and about 50 other scary titles. For most of his life, he was the thing that went bump in the night for half the galaxy. Now he's my friend." A murmur ran through the assembly. The idea that anyone could be friends with Krexthul was still difficult for most species to accept. "I'm not here to tell you that humans are special," Sarah continued. "We're not the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced. But we have something that apparently this galaxy needed. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten." Laughter rippled through the chamber, breaking some of the tension. The Void Breakers almost ended everything because they counted on fear to paralyze their enemies. They expected species to calculate the odds and surrender when defeat seemed certain. They didn't expect a species that makes friends with death. Sarah looked around the vast chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from hundreds of worlds. "That's what humans bring to this galaxy. Not superior firepower or ancient wisdom, but a simple refusal to give up. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is just keep going when everyone else stops." The speaker's crystalline form chimed softly. "Commander Chen, The Council has reviewed your proposal for the Terran Devourer Alliance. Many find it concerning. They're scared, Sarah said bluntly. The Devourers have been the galaxy's boogeyman for millions of years. The idea of working with them terrifies most species. And yet you advocate for their integration into galactic society? Sarah nodded. Because I've seen what they really are. They're survivors like humans. They've made terrible choices to stay alive just like we have. The difference is we're giving them a chance to make better choices. Krexthul stepped forward. If I may, Council Speaker, I have fought beside both humans and Devourers. I have seen their courage, their sacrifice, their commitment to preserving life even at great cost. The galaxy owes its continued existence to their alliance. And what of you, Krexthul? Asked the speaker. You have renounced your former titles, disbanded your fleets, and reportedly enrolled in what humans call anger management therapy. Some say you have gone soft. Krexthul's mandibles spread, and what Sarah had taught him was a smile. Soft? No, I have simply learned the difference between being feared and being respected. Commander Chen showed me that the strongest warrior is not the one who defeats all enemies, but the one who turns enemies into allies. Sarah grinned. He's a fast learner, though the anger management thing was his idea. Apparently, talking about your feelings is a big deal in Vorthak culture. Who knew? The proposal before us today, the speaker continued, is to establish the Galactic Defense Academy on the former Devourer homeworld, with human and Vorthak instructors training the next generation of defenders. This represents a significant shift in how we approach interspecies cooperation. It represents survival, Sarah said firmly. The Void Breakers are contained for now, but they're not gone, and they're not the only threat out there. The galaxy needs defenders who can think beyond traditional warfare, who can adapt, who can find hope in hopeless situations. A delegate from the Centauri Federation stood up. And you believe humans can teach this? Humans can share what we've learned, Sarah replied. But every species brings something to the table. Vorthak honor and combat expertise, Devourer knowledge of survival and adaptation, Centauri mathematical precision, Zephyrian diplomatic skills. The Academy isn't about humans teaching everyone else. It's about everyone learning from each other. Krexthul nodded. In human terms, it is about turning the galaxy's greatest weakness, our differences, into our greatest strength. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Species after species voiced concerns, objections, and fears. But gradually, something unprecedented happened. Old enemies began speaking in support of former foes. The Centauri praised Devourer tactical innovations. The Zephyrians acknowledged Vorthak warrior traditions. Even the notoriously isolationist quantum monks offered to share their reality manipulation techniques. Finally, the speaker called for a vote. The motion to establish the Galactic Defense Academy passes by a margin of 732 to 168. Commander Chen, Krexthul, you have your academy. The chamber erupted in cheers, though Sarah noticed it wasn't universal. Approval. Change never was. Later, as delegates filed out of the chamber, Sarah and Krexthul stood together on the viewing platform, looking out at the galaxy beyond. Do you think this will work? Krexthul asked. Honestly, I have no idea, Sarah admitted. But that's never stopped us before. Us? Humans, Vorthak, Devourers, even the Centauri when they stop calculating long enough to take risks. All of us. Sarah smiled. Besides, someone once told me that the best warriors are the ones who turn enemies into allies. A wise person, this. Someone? Yeah, he was okay. Bit dramatic, tendency to overthink things, terrible at small talk. But he grew on me. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching ships from a dozen different species departing for their home worlds. Sarah, Krexthul said finally, what you said about humans making friends with death. Yeah, I understand now. You do not seek death, but you have accepted it as part of life. This makes you free to truly live. Sarah nodded. My grandmother used to say, death is what gives life meaning. If you had forever, nothing would matter. We're all going to die eventually. The question is whether we'll do something worth remembering before we do. And what will you be remembered for? Sarah thought about it. Hopefully for proving that the scariest people in the universe can become the best friends. She looked at Krexthul. What about you? Krexthul's answer surprised her. For learning that honor is not about being the strongest. It is about standing beside those who make you stronger. As they left the chamber together, heading for their new roles as co-directors of the Galactic Defense Academy, Sarah realized something had fundamentally changed. She no longer carried a death wish. Somewhere along the way, fighting alongside Krexthul, building alliances with former enemies, and helping to save the galaxy, she had found something worth living for. Not just existing, not just surviving, but truly living. The galaxy was a dangerous place. There would always be threats, always be challenges, always be those who chose fear over hope. But as long as there were beings willing to stand together, to trust each other, to turn enemies into friends, there would also be tomorrow. And tomorrow, Sarah thought as she and Krexthul walked toward their ship, was going to be interesting. After all, they had a galaxy full of young warriors to train, and Sarah was looking forward to teaching them the most important lesson humans had to offer. Sometimes the best way to live is to not be afraid to die. But the best reason to live is to protect those you care about, even the scary ones, especially the scary ones.